गुड मॉर्निंग क्लास।
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
तो आज हम लोग एक नए चैप्टर पे आएंगे और नेम ऑफ द चैप्टर इज कैपिटल बजटिंग। कौन सा चैप्टर है? नेम ऑफ द चैप्टर इज कैपिटल बजटिंग। ठीक है, तो कैपिटल बजटिंग कुछ पॉइंट्स लिख लो पहले, उसके बाद फिर हम लोग इसके ऊपर बात करते हैं। हेलो,
Yes, sir.
सर
लिखो कैपिटल बजटिंग। कैपिटल बजटिंग is a long term capital budgeting is a long term financial investment decision. Full stop. It relates to using of different techniques. It relates to using of different techniques for identifying a project most suitable for the deployment of funds. Most suitable for the deployment of funds. Deployment, DEPLOYMENT, deployment of funds. Full stop. आगे लिखिएगा। The capital budgeting techniques are used to identify those projects which are capable of generating cash flows over a given period. Full stop. पैराग्राफ चेंज कीजिएगा। These decisions are important because because they involve huge investments, comma, नहीं full stop there. Capital budgeting decisions are irreversible irreversible. Capital budgeting decisions are irreversible except under situation of loss. Full stop. It means that once the investments have been made, in a project, comma, they can be reverted or retreated retreated only by suffering loss. Full stop. Loss. Full stop. आगे लिखिएगा. As investments in a project, या इसको ऐसे लिखो, as a project requires investment, and the funds need to be brought by undergoing the loss of an opportunity, comma, hence
सर अपॉर्चुनिटी के बाद क्या बोले?
hence hence loss of an opportunity, comma, hence consideration of Hence, consideration of an opportunity cost. Hence, the consideration of an opportunity cost is an important parameter for judging the viability of a project under capital budgeting techniques. Full stop.
सर बजटिंग के बाद
Techniques. Full stop. आगे लिखिएगा. Choice of a project becomes even more important. Because the resources available are limited, which means that all the projects cannot be invested into. पैराग्राफ चेंज करना, लिखना टेक्निक्स ऑफ कैपिटल बजटिंग. एक हेडिंग है टेक्निक्स ऑफ कैपिटल बजटिंग. लिखिएगा. Techniques of capital budgeting. There are different techniques. Of investments. There are different techniques of investments in a project under capital budgeting, full stop. Some involve the adjustments of time, and others do not take time into consideration. Full stop. All the capital budgeting techniques have been classified into the following two types. पहला लिखिएगा, नंबर 1, नॉन डिस्काउंटिंग टेक्निक, और नंबर 2, द डिस्काउंटिंग टेक्निक्स. नंबर 2 क्या लिखा आप लोगों ने? डिस्काउंटिंग टेक्निक्स. हेलो, मेरी आवाज आ रही है क्या क्लास?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है, पहला लिखना अब डिस्काउंटिंग टेक्निक्स. पहला क्या लिखे थे? नॉन डिस्काउंटिंग या डिस्काउंटिंग लिखे थे?
नॉन डिस्काउंटिंग.
नॉन डिस्काउंटिंग लिखो. पहला नॉन डिस्काउंटिंग. लिखिए, the non-discounting technique of capital budgeting does not take into consideration the time value of money. That is it focuses only upon the quantity or volume of cash flows or volume of cash flows. Full stop. It does not consider when the cash flows are being generated. Full stop. These techniques of capital budgeting are known as the traditional method of capital budgeting are known as the traditional method of capital budgeting. Some of the important non-discounting techniques are आइकन दे दो पॉइंट नंबर 1 लिखना payback period method दूसरा accounting rate of return method अब पॉइंट नंबर 2 लिखिएगा discounting technique of capital budgeting
नॉन डिस्काउंटिंग का फर्स्ट क्या था?
payback period method point number 2 है discounting techniques are also known as time adjusted methods or the modern techniques full stop. These methods considers the cash flow generated. These methods consider the cash flow generated after making adjustments for the time, that is when the cash flows have been generated. Full stop. Discounting full stop word. Discounting technique. Discounting techniques. Discounting techniques focuses upon the quality of cash flow. Focuses upon the quality of cash flow. किसके ऊपर फोकस करता है ये? Quality of cash flow.
Cash flow.
Quality of cash flow. Full stop. Some of the important discounting techniques of capital budgeting are. Some of the important discounting techniques of capital budgeting are. Number 1, net present value method. Net present value method. Net present value method. Point number 2. Internal rate of return method. Internal rate of return method. Number 3, profitability index method. Profitability index method. Number 4. Yield to maturity. Yield to maturity method. Yield to maturity method. Yield to maturity method. Full stop. चलो ठीक है, हो गया, लिख लिया ना?
यस सर।
तो अब आज हम लोग इसको थोड़ा पढ़ के रखना और नेक्स्ट क्लास में हम इसको समझाएंगे। तो लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग एंड कर रहे हैं, अटेंडेंस के लिए वेट करना।